The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, and neither had the tension inside the Parker household. The air itself felt heavy, like even the walls were tired of listening to the constant bickering between Emily and her older sister, Rachel. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her textbook spread before her, trying to study for tomorrow's math test. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound she could rely on to drown out Rachel's footsteps pacing upstairs. She was used to the pattern by now. Silence, then a door slamming, then their mother's voice calling, "Rachel, calm down," followed by Rachel's dramatic sobs echoing through the house. Rachel was 20, beautiful, and manipulative, a combination that gave her parents the illusion of innocence. Emily, 16, quieter and more logical, had learned long ago that truth rarely mattered in a house where tears won arguments. That evening, Emily's peace shattered when Rachel stormed into the kitchen, her face flushed and her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed fury. "Where is it?" she demanded. Emily blinked. "Where's what?" "My gold bracelet. The one Dad got me for graduation. I left it on my dresser and now it's gone." Emily's stomach dropped. "I haven't even been in your room." Rachel's eyes flashed. "Oh, really?" "Because I saw you walking out of my room this morning." "I borrowed your charger?" Emily said defensively. "I didn't take anything." Before she could say another word, their mother appeared in the doorway, drawn by Rachel's raised voice. "What's going on here?" Rachel turned, the tears already gathering in her eyes. "She took my bracelet, Mom. I've looked everywhere and it's gone. I know she's been jealous since forever, but this is too much." Emily froze. "That's not true. I didn't—" But Rachel was already sobbing, collapsing into their mother's arms. "She hates me. She's always trying to ruin my things." "You don't see it because she pretends to be innocent." Their mother hesitated. "Emily, if you did take it, just tell us." "We'll forgive you." Emily felt something sharp twist inside her chest. Not anger, but heartbreak. "Mom," she whispered, "I swear I didn't." Then came the heavy sound of footsteps, her father's, from the living room. He entered, his voice gruff with irritation. "What's this noise now?" Rachel turned toward him like a wounded dove. "Dad, she stole from me. The bracelet you gave me. It's gone." Her father's face hardened. "Emily, is that true?" "No, I didn't," Rachel cried harder, trembling, as if even hearing Emily's voice was too painful. "She's lying again. She always lies." And that was it. The scene was complete. Rachel wept. Their mother sighed. Their father scowled. And Emily stood there, guilty in everyone's eyes, though her hands were empty. The shouting began, accusations flying like daggers. Emily tried to defend herself, tried to remind them of all the times Rachel had lied before, but logic was no match for tears. Finally, her father slammed his hand on the table, the sound making Emily flinch. "I've had enough of this, Emily. You've been nothing but trouble. If you can't respect this house or your sister, then get out. Get out right now." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "Don't act innocent," he barked. "Pack your things and leave. I don't want to see your face until you've learned some respect." Her mother didn't protest. She looked away, wringing her hands, eyes full of uncertainty but not enough courage to speak. "Dad, please. Now." The command struck her like lightning. Emily's throat tightened, her chest burning as she ran upstairs to her room. She threw open drawers, her hands shaking too badly to pack properly. Clothes, notebooks, the half-finished sketchbook she'd been working on, she shoved them into her old backpack. Her shoes were nowhere to be found. She looked one last time at the family photos on her dresser, smiling faces frozen in a lie, then zipped the bag shut and walked downstairs. Rachel stood near the doorway, her arms crossed, eyes red but triumphant. "You should have just told the truth, Emily." Emily stared at her sister, the same sister she'd once shared secrets and bedtime giggles with, and saw nothing familiar left. Only a stranger wearing her sister's face. When she turned to her father, he pointed to the door. "Out." The rain outside sounded louder now. She hesitated, her bare feet trembling on the cold floor. "You're really throwing me out?" she whispered, Her father didn't answer. Her mother only said, "Please, don't make this harder." And so Emily stepped out. The rain hit her skin like shards of glass. The porch light flickered behind her, casting her long shadow across the wet driveway. She walked down the street barefoot, water pooling around her ankles, her backpack growing heavier with every step. Somewhere behind her, she heard the door slam, the final punctuation mark on 16 years of belonging. By the time she reached the end of the block, the house was no longer visible through the curtain of rain. Emily stopped, wiped her eyes, and whispered to herself, "It's just rain. It's just water." But it wasn't. It was everything. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the death of trust, all pouring down at once. That night, under a flickering streetlight, Emily found herself truly alone for the first time. And though she didn't know it yet, that was the night her real life began. The night Emily was thrown out, the rain finally stopped just before dawn, but the cold didn't. She sat on the curb, hugging her knees, her soaked clothes sticking to her skin. The world felt so big and indifferent. Cars passed occasionally, splashing water on the cracked asphalt, and not a single one slowed down. By morning, her stomach growled with hunger. She'd left without breakfast, without shoes, without a plan. Her backpack, heavy with clothes, felt like the only thing tethering her to existence. She walked aimlessly for hours until the pain in her feet blurred into numbness. The city looked different now, not the place she'd known when she still had a home. In daylight, the streets revealed their cruelty, people rushing past, pretending not to see her, and store owners giving her suspicious looks. She tried sitting outside a bakery for warmth, but the owner chased her off with a broom. By evening, exhaustion overtook fear. She found an empty bus shelter near a gas station and curled up on the bench, hugging her backpack like a shield. The wind howled through the glass panels. Somewhere in the distance, she heard laughter. Families heading home, doors opening to light and warmth. For her, there was only the cold. When the rain returned, she pressed her knees to her chest, whispering to herself, "Just one night. I'll figure it out tomorrow." But tomorrow stretched into several tomorrows. The next few days blurred into one another. Emily scavenged what little she could. Discarded sandwiches from a trash can behind a deli, coins dropped near parking meters, a bottle of water from a kind stranger who didn't ask questions. Her feet were blistered and raw. Each step felt like walking on fire, but she kept moving. Sometimes she passed by families having dinner through bright kitchen windows. A mother laughing, a father carving meat, a child setting the table. The sight stabbed at her like a memory she could never have again. She wondered if her own family was eating, if Rachel was sitting at the table pretending to cry about her missing bracelet. On the fourth night, as the temperature dropped and the wind grew sharper, she wandered to a small diner on the corner of 5th and Maple. Through the fogged glass, she could see people drinking coffee, waitresses wiping tables, and a warm orange glow she hadn't felt in days. Emily hesitated, her reflection in the glass almost unrecognizable. Dirt on her cheeks, tangled hair, the faint bruise on her arm from when she'd tripped over a curb. She didn't want pity. She just wanted warmth. So she sat outside the diner's door, back against the wall, and closed her eyes. The smell of pancakes and bacon was almost unbearable. A few minutes later, the door opened, and a woman's voice cut through the cold. "Honey, you'll freeze out here," Emily startled. The woman standing before her was older, maybe in her 50s, with tired but kind eyes and a waitress's apron still tied around her waist. Her name tag read Mrs. Howard. I'm sorry," Emily stammered, trying to stand. "I wasn't bothering anyone." "I'll go," Mrs. Howard frowned. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." Emily's lips trembled. "I'm fine." "Sweetheart," Mrs. Howard said gently, "nobody sitting outside in 40-degree weather is fine." Before Emily could protest, the woman ushered her inside. The diner was nearly empty, just the hum of an old jukebox and the scent of fresh coffee. The warmth hit her like a wave, and for the first time in days she felt her fingers again. Mrs. Howard led her to a corner booth. "Sit here. You're safe." A few minutes later, she returned with a plate, scrambled eggs, toast, and a steaming mug of cocoa. Emily's throat tightened. "I can't pay." "It's on me," Mrs. Howard interrupted. "Eat first. Talk later." Emily hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you," before devouring the food, tears mixing with every bite. When she finished, Mrs. Howard sat across from her, wiping her hands on a towel. "So," she said softly, "what's your name?" "Emily." "And how old are you, Emily?" 16. The woman's expression softened further. "You've got that look. The one I've seen before. You've been through something bad, haven't you?" Emily couldn't answer. She just nodded. Mrs. Howard sighed. "I've run this place 20 years. Kids come and go. Some just need a warm meal. But something tells me you need more than that." Emily looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the mug. I need a chance. I'll work for food if I have to." Mrs. Howard studied her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You know what? You're hired. You can start washing dishes tomorrow morning. Doesn't pay much, but it's honest work, and it comes with meals." Emily's breath caught. "Are you serious?" "As a heart attack," Mrs. Howard said. "But you've got to promise me something." "What's that?" "Promise you'll never let anyone convince you that you're worth less than you are." "You've got fire in your eyes, kid. Don't let the world put it out." Emily nodded, her eyes stinging again. But this time, from something that almost felt like hope. That night, Mrs. Howard gave her an old blanket and let her sleep in the diner's small storage room. Emily curled up on a pile of folded linens, the smell of coffee and maple syrup in the air. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Not loved yet, not whole, but safe. And in the quiet hum of the diner, as the neon sign flickered outside, Emily whispered to herself, "I'll make it. I'll make it somehow." She didn't know how or when, but she meant it. Because after being thrown out barefoot into the dark, even the smallest kindness felt like the beginning of light. The clock above the diner door ticked softly as sunlight poured through the windows. It had been almost a year since that rainy night when Emily was thrown out barefoot. And in that time, the diner had become her world. A world that smelled like coffee and pancakes, where she was more than the unwanted child who once cried on a cold curb. Mrs. Howard kept her promise. She gave Emily food, work, and most importantly, a sense of belonging. In exchange, Emily gave her everything she had, showing up early, cleaning the kitchen spotless, learning how to handle customers, and earning every dollar with quiet pride. On the evenings when the diner emptied and the closed sign hung in the window, Mrs. Howard often sat with Emily at a booth, a cup of coffee in hand. "You're a hard worker, kid," she'd say. "But hard work's not the same as having a plan. What do you want to do with that fire in you?" For a long time, Emily didn't have an answer. Then one night, she did. She'd been cleaning tables when a man left behind a sketch pad filled with designs, logos, posters, and vivid digital art. Each page fascinated her. She asked Mrs. Howard if she could look through it, and when she did, something stirred inside her, a spark that had been buried under the ashes of rejection and survival. The next day, with her small savings and Mrs. Howard's encouragement, Emily bought a used laptop from a pawn shop. She started watching free tutorials on graphic design late into the night, sitting in the diner's storage room. Her only light the glow of the screen, she practiced obsessively, tracing letters, experimenting with colors, studying every angle of digital creativity. It was the first thing that made her feel powerful again. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a rusted building that looked like it might fall apart any second. It wasn't much, but the landlord didn't ask questions and the rent was cheap. She handed over the cash, every bit she'd saved from her shifts, and signed the paper with a trembling hand. Her first apartment was tiny, with one window that didn't quite close, peeling paint on the walls, and pipes that groaned through the night. But to Emily, it was freedom. She cleaned every inch, set her laptop on a makeshift desk of stacked crates, and whispered, "This is mine." Every morning, she worked at the diner. Every evening, she designed. She took small commissions online: a banner for a local business, a logo for a YouTube channel, an album cover for a struggling musician. Her earnings were meager at first, but the satisfaction was beyond measure. Her art wasn't just drawings. It was her story, pieces of herself she couldn't say out loud. She used bright colors to drown out the gray of her past. Every new client brought her closer to believing she had a future. Mrs. Howard often visited her apartment, bringing soup and snacks. "You're building something, Emily," she'd say with a proud smile. "Don't stop now." One evening, while designing a poster for a local event, Emily paused to look out the window. Down below, a little girl was walking hand in hand with her father, laughing, carefree and loved. The sight should have hurt, but instead, Emily smiled softly. She wasn't that little girl anymore, but she was finally taking care of herself the way no one else had. Still, there were nights when the loneliness returned. Nights when she'd wake up sweating from dreams of Rachel crying fake tears, of her father yelling, of that front door slamming behind her. On those nights, she'd sit at her desk, pull out her old sketchbook, and draw barefoot footprints in the rain, a reminder of how far she'd come. By the time Emily turned 19, her online design page had hundreds of followers. One of her posters went viral, and suddenly she had more work than she could handle. She upgraded to a better laptop, moved into a slightly nicer apartment, and started dreaming about turning her freelancing into a full-time business. She named her online studio Barefoot Designs, not as a mark of pain, but as a symbol of survival. Her logo was simple: 2 faint footprints leading toward a sunrise. The first time she received a large payment from a client, enough to cover her rent for months, she couldn't stop crying. She called Mrs. Howard immediately. "You did it, sweetheart," Mrs. Howard said over the phone, her voice trembling with pride. "You built yourself from nothing." Emily smiled through tears. "No," she whispered. "You helped me believe I was something." Mrs. Howard laughed. "Maybe. But you're the one who walked barefoot through hell and kept going." Emily hung up and looked around her small apartment, at the sunlight filtering through the thin curtains, at the drawings pinned to the walls, at the quiet hum of her computer. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. But she was free. And for the first time, she felt proud of the girl who had once walked away in the rain. Still, sometimes she caught herself wondering about her family. Did they ever think of her? Did Rachel ever feel guilt? Did her parents regret throwing her out? The questions lingered in her chest like ghosts, unanswered but not forgotten. One quiet evening, Emily received a message from an unknown number. "Emily, this is Mom." Her heart skipped a beat. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, frozen between past and present. Then she whispered to herself. Not again, but the message blinked again unread. And in that single flash, Emily knew. The past wasn't done with her yet. The message came on a quiet Sunday morning, a soft buzz from her phone that pulled Emily out of her design work. "Emily, it's Mom. Please, can we talk?" The words made her breath hitch. She hadn't seen or heard from her mother in 4 years. Her hands trembled as she read it again, her heart thudding in her chest. She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. After all this time, after all those nights she'd cried herself to sleep on a diner floor, now they wanted to talk. For a full day, she didn't reply. She threw herself into work, trying to drown the storm rising inside her. But curiosity, that relentless ache of what if, wouldn't let her rest. By midnight, she finally typed, "I'm fine. What do you want to talk about?" The reply came within minutes. "Please meet me. Tomorrow at noon." At the diner, her stomach twisted. The diner. The same place where her new life began. When Emily walked into Mrs. Howard's diner the next day, the smell of coffee and pancakes hit her with a flood of memories. The woman who had saved her life looked up from behind the counter. "Morning, sweetheart. You look like you've seen a ghost." Emily gave a faint smile. "Maybe I have." Mrs. Howard's sharp eyes narrowed. Family? Emily nodded. Mrs. Howard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens, remember this. You're not that scared girl anymore. Emily took a deep breath, then turned toward the corner booth and froze. Her mother sat there, hands clasped, face pale. Time had not been kind to her. Her hair had grayed, and her eyes carried the weight of guilt that no concealer could hide. When she saw Emily, her lips trembled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Emily, she whispered, standing up. Emily didn't hug her. She slid into the seat across from her instead. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft clatter of dishes and the low hum of an old jukebox. Then her mother sighed. You look different, stronger. I had to be, Emily replied quietly. Her mother nodded, blinking fast. I deserve that, Emily leaned back. So why now? After all this time? Her mother's hands shook slightly as she reached for her coffee. Because Rachel told us the truth. Emily's chest tightened. The truth? She admitted everything, her mother whispered. The bracelet, the lies. She told us you never took anything. She said she made it up because she was jealous. Jealous that your father and I were starting to pay more attention to you. Emily laughed bitterly. Starting to pay attention? You mean after 16 years of ignoring me? Her mother's lip quivered. I know. We failed you, Emily. I failed you. I can't take back what happened. But I needed you to know that we know now. And that we're sorry. Emily's hands curled around her mug, her pulse pounding. For years she'd dreamed of this moment, her family finally realizing the truth. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. Where's Dad? She asked. Her mother looked down. He's sick. Heart problems. He wanted to come, but he's too weak. He wants to see you, though. So does Rachel. Rachel? Emily repeated sharply. She's not doing well, her mother admitted. Her husband left her. She lost her job. She's been staying with us again. She cries every day, says she wishes she could undo what she did to you. Emily stared out the window. Cars passed, people laughed, life moved on, but her heart felt frozen in place. Why are you telling me this? She asked finally. Because you deserve to know, her mother said softly. And because we want you to come home, just once, to see us. To let us apologize in person. The words hung in the air like smoke. Home, the same place that had thrown her into the rain without shoes. The same voices that had told her she was a burden. The same door that had slammed behind her while she cried in the dark. Now they wanted her to walk back through it. Emily felt something burn in her throat. Anger, sorrow, maybe both. You think a few apologies can fix years of being unwanted? Tears filled her mother's eyes. No, I just want you to have peace. We all need it. Emily looked at Mrs. Howard behind the counter, the woman who had given her food, safety, and love without asking for anything in return. And she realized something painful and freeing all at once. Peace wasn't something her family could give her. It was something she'd already found for herself. Still, a part of her wanted closure, not forgiveness, not reunion, just an ending. She finally nodded. I'll come once. Her mother's face lit up with relief. Thank you, Emily. You don't know what that means to me. Emily stood, her voice calm but cold. No, Mom, you don't know what it meant to me when you watched me walk away barefoot. Then she turned to leave. Outside, the sunlight was harsh and blinding. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the air, the same air she once gasped in as a terrified child. Only this time she wasn't broken. She was strong, successful, and standing on her own 2 feet. Still, deep in her chest, something stirred, a mix of fear and anticipation. The next step would take her back to the place that had destroyed her. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to face the ruins of her past. 2 weeks after the meeting at the diner, Emily finally gathered the courage to face the ghosts waiting for her. The drive to her parents' home felt longer than she remembered. every turn of the road peeling back a layer of old memories she thought she'd buried. The trees looked smaller now. The mailbox was still rusted and leaning to one side. Even the porch light, the one that had flickered the night she left, still buzzed faintly, like it refused to die. Emily parked across the street, gripping the steering wheel as her heart pounded in her chest. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, sometimes as revenge, sometimes as reconciliation. But now that it was real, she just felt tired. She stepped out of the car and stood before the house that once threw her away. The front door opened slowly, and her mother appeared, her face pale but hopeful. "Emily," she whispered. Emily nodded stiffly. "Hi, Mom." Her mother's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move to hug her. Maybe she knew that Bridge was gone. Inside, the house smelled faintly of disinfectant and old wood. It hadn't changed much. The same floral wallpaper, the same crooked picture frames. The memories hit her all at once. Laughter that used to fill these rooms, arguments that later replaced it, the silence that followed. Then she heard it. A weak cough from the living room. Her father sat on the couch, thinner than she remembered, his face hollowed by illness and regret. The man who once shouted her out into the rain now looked fragile, almost small. When their eyes met, neither spoke. Finally, he said in a hoarse voice, "You look like your mother." Emily swallowed hard. "You look different," he gave a faint smile. "That's one way to say old." A painful silence followed. Then he took a shaky breath. "I was wrong, Emily. I should have protected you. I should have believed you." His voice cracked, raw and unsteady. "Not a day goes by that I don't regret that night." Emily's eyes burned, but she forced her voice to stay even. "You told me to get out. You didn't even ask if I had shoes." He looked down, tears pooling in his eyes. "I remember." Her mother sniffled quietly beside him. "We were blinded by Rachel. She always knew how to get what she wanted." The mention of her sister's name made Emily tense. "Where is she?" Her mother hesitated, then motioned toward the hallway. "In her room." Emily walked slowly toward the door, her footsteps echoing softly on the wooden floor. The moment she pushed it open, Rachel looked up from her bed, and time seemed to stop. Her once perfect sister was almost unrecognizable. Her hair was tangled, her eyes swollen from crying, and the pride that had always clung to her like perfume was gone. Rachel stood quickly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Emily." Emily froze in the doorway. "You wanted to see me?" Rachel's voice broke. "I don't know what to say. I've rehearsed it 1,000 times, but nothing feels enough." "Try anyway," Emily said quietly. Rachel took a shaky breath. "I ruined your life. I lied because I wanted attention. I wanted them to look at me the way they started to look at you. Proud, admiring, loving. And when they did, I panicked. So I made up the story about the bracelet. I watched you beg them to believe you, and I let them throw you out." Her voice cracked as she covered her face. "You have every right to hate me." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to yell, to make Rachel feel the years of pain and loneliness she'd endured. But instead, she felt an emptiness she hadn't expected. "I don't hate you," she said softly. "I used to. Every night I pictured you crying the way I did, alone and unwanted. But now, I don't want that for anyone." Rachel looked up in disbelief. "You're forgiving me?" "No," Emily said firmly. "I'm freeing myself." "There's a difference." She turned toward the doorway, her voice calm but steady. "You were the reason I lost my family, but you were also the reason I found myself." Rachel broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Emily didn't stay to comfort her. She walked back to the living room where her parents sat silently. Her father whispered, "Can you ever forgive us?" Emily looked at him, at the man who'd once towered over her, now frail and remorseful. "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once and receive," she said quietly. "It's something you prove every day. Maybe one day I'll be ready, but not yet." Her mother reached out a trembling hand. "We miss you, Emily." "I miss who you could have been," she replied softly. As she stepped out of the house, The cold evening air hit her face like a wake-up call. The same porch where she'd once stood barefoot and trembling now felt like the final page of a chapter she'd long outgrown. Her mother followed her to the door. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. Emily paused. "You were right, Mom. I did find peace, just not here." Then she turned and walked toward her car. Before getting in, she looked down at her shoes, clean, sturdy, new. A memory flickered in her mind of the 16-year-old girl who'd left this place barefoot in the rain, and for a brief, bittersweet moment, she smiled. The night after visiting her parents' house, Emily couldn't sleep. The silence in her apartment, usually peaceful, now felt heavy, filled with echoes of things unsaid. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's trembling hands, her mother's tear-streaked face, and Rachel, a shell of the sister she once knew. For years, Emily had dreamed of that moment. She thought it would bring closure, but instead it left her feeling hollow. Forgiveness wasn't a switch to flip. It was a long, painful road. She sat by the window with a mug of tea, watching raindrops race down the glass. The same kind of rain that had poured the night she was thrown out. "Funny," she whispered to herself. "Life always circles back." A week later, she received a letter in the mail, written in shaky handwriting she immediately recognized. Her father. She hesitated before opening it, her pulse quickening. "Emily, I don't know how much time I have left. The doctors say it could be weeks. I just want to see you once more, not to ask for forgiveness, but to thank you. That night you came home. It changed something in all of us. Rachel has been going to therapy. Your mother smiles again, even when she cries. If I could go back to that night when you were 16, I would have stopped her, stopped myself, stopped everything. But I can't. I just hope wherever you go in life, you remember that I loved you, even when I was too proud to show it." "Dad," Emily's hands trembled as she folded the letter. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't bitter. They were soft, cleansing, like rain after years of drought. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the girl who had been thrown out barefoot. She felt like someone who had survived it. 3 days later, she drove back to her hometown, this time not to revisit the past, but to lay it to rest. The old house stood quiet, its windows dark. Her mother answered the door, eyes swollen but gentle. "He's inside," she said simply. Emily walked into the living room. Her father lay in a recliner, his chest rising and falling weakly. When he saw her, he smiled, faintly, but enough to light up the room. "You came," he whispered. She knelt beside him, taking his frail hand in hers. "I got your letter. I meant every word," he murmured. "You were always stronger than I was." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. "I just wanted you to know. I'm okay now. You don't have to worry anymore." A tear slipped down his cheek. "That's all I needed to hear." He closed his eyes, and a peaceful silence filled the room. One that felt like forgiveness, even if neither said it aloud. Her father passed away 2 days later. At the funeral, Rachel stood beside Emily, her hand trembling in hers. She didn't try to speak. Words weren't needed. After everyone left, Emily lingered by the grave, the autumn wind brushing through her hair. She placed a small bracelet on the soil, the one Rachel had accused her of stealing all those years ago. "Here," she whispered. "It's where it belongs." She turned to leave, but glanced once more at the sky. The clouds had begun to part, sunlight spilling through like a quiet promise. Months passed. Emily poured her emotions into writing, something she'd always done in secret. Her essays about healing, family, and forgiveness began gaining attention online. One day, a publisher reached out, asking if she'd consider turning her story into a book. She titled it Barefoot in the Rain. The book became more than a memoir. It became her way of reclaiming everything she'd lost. She wrote about that night, the pain, the years of loneliness, and the moment she finally chose peace over revenge. Readers from around the world connected with her story, sending letters saying it helped them forgive too. Rachel eventually moved to a nearby town and began volunteering at a shelter for runaway teens. She would sometimes visit Emily for coffee, their conversations cautious but real. They didn't talk about the past much anymore. They didn't need to. Their presence was apology enough. One spring afternoon, Emily drove by her childhood home again. The for sale sign was gone, and a young family was outside, children laughing, a golden retriever running in circles. The sight filled her with an unexpected warmth. That house wasn't hers anymore. Not the one she left barefoot and broken, not the one that haunted her dreams. It belonged to someone new, someone who would fill it with laughter again. She parked across the street, took a deep breath and whispered, "Goodbye." Then she smiled, not with bitterness, but with quiet triumph, and drove away toward the life she built herself. That night, she posted a message on her blog. You can't change the past, but you can choose how loudly it echoes in your future. I was thrown out barefoot at 16, but I walked far enough to find peace. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. As thousands of hearts reacted and comments poured in, Emily closed her laptop and looked at her reflection in the window. Older, stronger, unafraid. The rain started again, tapping softly on the glass. But this time, she didn't flinch. She smiled, because for the first time in her life, she was finally home.